Next up, we have Sam. So he's the co-founder of YCommerce, where he builds and runs multiple seven-figure e-commerce businesses in the branded dropshipping space. He and his team have found a model where they can mitigate the difficulties consumers experience in unknowingly buying dropship products while transitioning towards building real brands, with owned manufacturing processes doing serious numbers. And with that, he's going to talk about Blitz scaling from 0 to 1 million monthly revenue with Facebook ads, and I guess get a little more advanced in techniques. So with that, we'll hand it off to Sam. Thanks. Round of applause.
Good job. Thank you, man. All right, perfect. Can everybody hear me? Cool. So there's going to be a few things. I didn't realize the room would be quite so long. That are slightly small. So if anyone at the back can't see them, just let me know and I'll point things out. Okay. So who am I? Most of you probably have no idea who I am. So my name's Sam Venning. I'm originally from the UK, and I moved over here about 4 or 5 years ago. I began doing marketing about 10 years ago now. But started to specialize in what we kind of call media buying in 2015. I started going solo in 2016. So basically what I would do is I had a full-time job. I would go home in the evenings and essentially just build sales funnels by myself, which is really nerdy, but I used to find it really fun and really fulfilling. After kind of a few tries of doing it, I got reasonably decent at it. And my first one that hit, I did about $200,000 in revenue in 7 days, but I had absolutely no idea about product fulfillment, product sourcing. So I basically had a store with like thousands and thousands of orders in, but no product to send anyone. So I ended up losing a shitload of money, got loads of complaints and everything else. But the main thing is I learned a lot from the experience. Fast forward, I started my first business first real business probably in 2017. And we did 7 million in our first 7 months. We were selling hair extensions. And then kind of since that time, over the last 3 years, I've developed 12 7 to 8 figure different e-com stores with zero funding, and they were all completely bootstrapped. Last year, I started the company that I'm at now called YCommerce. We did $12 million in revenue in our first 8 months. And now, kind of this year, we focus on direct-to-consumer brands. We focus on subscriptions, and we do a lot of joint ventures with media companies and influencers. Some of the guys that we started to work with, there's the Dodo. They have the world's biggest Facebook page. They have a lot of amazing engagement, and they have the biggest animal page on Instagram. We work with Thrillist. Now this, and also another chap that we just started working with is a guy called Diesel Dave. He is on a show called The Diesel Brothers, and that's the highest rated show on the Discovery Channel of all time. So today, what I want to do is I want to teach you the exact blueprint. So this is what we're doing right now to scale our stores from zero to $1 million in really just a few months. And I'm not talking $1 million in 3 months. I'm talking $1 million a month in revenue using Facebook ads. But the main thing is doing it profitably, because a lot of guys run at this scale and they'll post lots of screenshots and everything else. But the real reality is most of them aren't profitable. Most of them are losing money, but they're doing it to sell whatever they're trying to do for their own info brand. So what I've tried to do is break this down into 3 steps for you. By the way, guys, for all of you like taking pictures of the slides, I think they're all going to be sent to you, so you don't have to worry if you don't want to. So I've broken it down into 3 simple steps. So step 1 is combined of your infrastructure. So that's the infrastructure of your ad account, and then actually setting up the ads themselves. So I walk and talk you through that and exactly how we do it. Step 2 is audience and creative testing. And then step 3 is what we call something called ad account hopping, and then a method that we use to scale called Blitz scaling. So out of everyone here, who's currently running traffic on Facebook? Okay, so a small number of you. So What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible and kind of try to go in depth and explain things. But if there's anything you don't get, note it down and just go home and Google it. There's such an amazing amount of information. And just because something sounds complicated and sounds scary, it shouldn't stop you from getting started, okay? Like Roman did it, I did it. Yeah, I had no idea, obviously, as I just told you. But, just go and Google it and just get started. So the first question is, why do we need a good infrastructure? So over the last 12 months, Facebook has obviously been in the news with a lot of data issues. And what they've started to do is take who is advertising on their platform very, very seriously. But, however, they kick off a lot of people. People like myself, I've been kicked off of Facebook probably 5 or 6 times, and I do nothing, like absolutely nothing wrong, right? And so what we need to make sure we do is mitigate our risk by spreading our spend, okay? And so a traditional setup inside of Facebook, and this is what most companies are doing, they'll have something called a business manager. So a business manager is essentially where you go to sign up to Facebook, and it amalgamates all of your ad accounts, all of your spend, and everything else, okay? All of your pages and whatever you need. All your settings are in there. And then generally, most people will have one ad account that they spend all their money on. However, what happens is if you're too aggressive at the start, or you're doing something that Facebook doesn't like, or like most people doing fuck all wrong, Facebook will just ban you, right? And so that means you can no longer advertise, and if like most e-commerce businesses, so for us, 70% of our revenue comes from Facebook, okay? So that means that's 70% of our revenue gone if we can no longer advertise. So what we actually do is when we get started is we actually source more business managers. So what you can do is you can source them from friends, family, anyone with a Facebook account can create a business manager, and then they can add you onto the business manager. And then in each business manager, we're also going to be making multiple ad accounts, okay? So what that means, if one ad account goes down, then we still are able to spend and scale across 2 different ad accounts, which if you're trying to generate millions in revenue a month, you need to have this, because if not, if it goes down, again, you lose everything, you lose the lifeblood of your business. With us, we have pretty high overheads, so if we lose the way that we make money, then our business within a couple of months could be kaput. So what we're gonna do now is start talking about how we set up our ads. So when you're setting up, okay, just use one ad account from one business manager, okay? And then the first thing most people tend to ask is what should their budget be? So what should they start with, right? Especially if you've never run ads before. So for me, generally I like it the higher the better. Why? Because the more money I spend, the more data I can get back, and then the more I can learn, and the more I can validate my ads or my creative, or the audiences that I'm testing at the time, okay? So, as a rule of thumb, I know Roman showed you the numbers, right? The target ROAS. So in that, you can have a target CPA, so cost per acquisition. That's how much you can afford to pay for a customer. So I generally, as a rule of thumb, times that by 5 to 10x. So if you've got a target CPA of $10, I want to be spending a minimum of $50 to $100 a day per campaign, okay? That way, after I finish testing, I know I've got enough data to validate what I'm trying to run, whether it's a new product or a new offer. So when you're going in and you're setting up your campaigns, obviously the first thing, like I mentioned, you're going to be prompted for is your budget. So with us, what I'm actually going to do now is walk you through a campaign that we've been running for the last 3 months, and one that we've successfully scaled to 7 figures a month. So for this campaign, our target cost per acquisition was only $5, which is really, really low, okay? So we have to be pretty aggressive with that. So what we're doing is we're setting our budget at campaign level for $60. For us, obviously, that's 12 times your CPA. But again, our target CPA was low, so I can go slightly above the 5 to 10x rule. I'm always running conversion campaigns. Don't run anything else. Don't run for impressions, because you'll just lose money, okay? The reason why you want to run for a conversion campaign is because the magical thing about Facebook is that the algorithm does all the heavy lifting for you, okay? How many of you guys have heard of, does anyone here know what a CBO is? Only Roman and a couple of others? Okay. So basically, traditionally, Facebook, when you would set your budgets at ad set level. So inside the ads manager where you manage your ads from, you have campaign level where you manage all of your campaigns. Then you have ad set level, and your ad sets sit within one campaign. And ad sets are where you choose your audiences and your placements. And then you have different ads in each ad set, okay? Or you can have multiple ads in each ad set. So traditionally, you would set your budget from ad set level. However, over the last couple of years, they've given the ability to advertisers to set it at campaign level, which doesn't sound like much, but we see significantly better results when we're setting it at campaign level. And the reason why is because you're giving more control to Facebook. Whereas if you're setting it at ad set level, you're saying, I want to spend this much money per day on this audience. Whereas if you're setting it at campaign level, you're basically saying, okay, Facebook, you choose where to spend my money and where to optimize my results best. So we're setting these $60 CBOs. So in each CBO, we do a maximum of 6 ad sets, okay? That's 6 different interests. So for example, if you're selling camping gear, right, you'd usually start with your most relevant interests. So you might have interests of camping, people who like tents, campfires, s'mores, right, as your interests. And then what we do is we have 1 interest per ad set, okay? That's very important because I want to know if this interest is doing really well. If I've got 5 or 10 different interests in there all piled up, I don't know which interest is converting, which interest is making me money, right? It's a guess. So what we do is we split them into individual interests, and we make sure, this is really important, if you want to hit scale and you want to spend lots of money, you need to make sure each audience size is at least 1 million people big, right? At least. The reason being, if you want to spend lots of money, you're going to burn through this audience really quickly. If you're trying to spend $5, $10, $20,000 on it, it will be burnt through within a couple of days, okay? So the next thing we do is we actually set a minimum spend at ad set level. The reason being, as I mentioned, we're using CBOs. So we're letting Facebook decide where to spend the money. However, because we're testing and I'm trying to see what audiences are working and what creative is working, I'm going to set my minimum budget because I want, after a certain number of days, what I want to be able to do is I want there to be a minimum amount of spend so I can then look and analyze the data. Whereas if I don't have that minimum amount of spend, Facebook may choose 1 ad set or 1 interest to focus on and spend all the money, but then it leaves me with 5 other interests that I can't derive any information from. Okay, so that's going to come in under your budget and schedule. Just hit advanced and then go in and just set that. Again, our rule of thumb is make sure that it's your target CPA. So ours is $5, so we make sure we're spending a minimum on each ad set of $5 a day. So next up is your placements, okay? So we used to do all placements and let Facebook do the heavy lifting. However, we've started to switch things up because, for example, if you're using the Facebook feed or the Instagram feed, so for those of you that don't know, Facebook owns Instagram, so you can advertise on both platforms natively inside of Facebook Ads Manager. So we'll separate them out. The main reason being, the Facebook feed is you can add links in your ad copy. In the Instagram feed, you can't. So all those guys who are running ads on Facebook and then just also running them on Instagram with links, they're just dead links and it looks really poor. So your ad copy is going to be slightly different. I'm not going to go into too much depth about that, but just have a look on your Instagram feed and then your Facebook feed and look at the different types of ads. But what we will do is per campaign, we will segment by placement. So in this case, let's just say we're taking the Instagram feed only, okay? So we will deselect all those other choices and only run Instagram feed. And next is our ad setup. So all we're doing per ad set is running 4 to 6 different variations. With your ads, for us, the most important thing, the thing that plays the biggest role is the creative. So we used to always run video. However, we're starting to see a lot of success running images now. So what I usually recommend is running 4 different videos or 3 different videos and 2 different image ads, okay? Your videos, they've got to be eye-catching and they've got to get a hook within the first 5 seconds. So a great example, a video for us that crushed recently, I own a teeth whitening company. is at the start of the video, we had someone just throw a bottle of wine over someone's face, right? Completely unrelated, but the engagement on the ad was unlike anything I've ever seen, right? It's a thumb stopper. What you have to remember is the difference between something like Google or using Amazon is people on there have high buying intent, right? Because they're ready to buy. They're looking for something to buy. Whereas when you're on your newsfeed, you're there to look at pictures of cats and fucking dogs or whatever, right? You're not there looking to buy something. So you've got to get someone to stop, and you've got to get someone to listen to what you have to offer. And you've only got a minute amount of time to be able to do that. So once you set up your campaign to start, right? This is how, once you set up your testing campaigns, this is how it's going to look, okay? So you've got campaign 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each one is a CBO. So in our case, it's a $60 budget CBO. So each campaign has a $60 budget. So I think straight off the bat, we're going to be spending about $240 a day, okay? And then we separate them out by placements. So we have interests, and then we also have lookalikes. So for those of you that don't know, Facebook has a really, really awesome tool that allows you to look at, say, your customers and then match those people to other like-minded people on Facebook, okay? So that's essentially your lookalike audiences. So what you can do is if you've got 1,000 buyers, you can upload those into Facebook, and then Facebook will give you a big pool of people, of essentially similar-minded people that look like your buyers, okay? And so we're also going to start running to those, but we're still going to separate out Facebook and Instagram feed, 6 ad sets for each, or 6 interests or lookalikes for each, with 4 to 6 different creatives. So when we first start, the big mistake people make, especially when getting started, is you're always left disappointed, because you're not making money right away. People expect to press that nice green button on Facebook and expect it to be an ATM that's just printing money. In reality, that's not how it works. And that's how I know I beat most people in the room when it comes to media buying, because I'm the most patient. So what we're trying to do at the very start is we're just trying to validate. And by that, I mean we're trying to validate what the actual offer is. So if I'm selling my camping equipment and I'm selling a tent, I want to make sure that at the end of the 3 days that I'm going to test for, okay, that I'm going to be able to validate and make sure that when I scale with as little risk as possible. So why do we choose 3 days to run our tests for? Firstly, the day is a variable. So, for example, your customers have different buying habits and different buying intents on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So for us, our most profitable day of the week is a Friday. Whereas on a Sunday, it's where we make the least money. It's where our margins are tightest, okay? So we're always running our test over a minimum of 3 days. And what we're looking for is basically, again, to validate our data, but I want to see consistencies over days, or I want to see improvements. One sec. Okay, so basically, remember a minute ago, this is how I showed you how kind of your account should look after you set up your ads, okay? What I'm going to do is I want to simplify everything, and I'm just going to focus on one campaign for our creative and our audience testing. Because if not, if I'm going to focus on every single one, it's going to be a real cluster on there. So let's try just keep it as simple as possible. So I'm going to take one campaign, which is our interests for the Facebook feed. So day one, you launch your campaigns and you let them spend money. So day one, it's going to spend $60. If you are close to break even, okay, so the question I always ask myself when I get in there day 2 in the morning in the ad account is, am I close to break even or am I making more money, okay? If I am close to break even, then what I'm going to do is I duplicate my campaign, and then I change the interests. So in this case, the Facebook feed CBO, is it close to break even? Yep, perfect. I duplicate, and I run different sets of interests in there. Day 3, exactly the same. Are they close to breaking even? Yep, duplicate them, more interest. And then day 4, same thing, okay? Very, very simple. So this is kind of what this looks like, okay? So day 1, I've just set up my campaign. As you can tell, I've got a bunch of campaigns that I'm running. I spent $394, and I've made, or the cost per action or cost per acquisition for me was $7.31 for those of you guys that can't see. So I'm losing money, right? Most people would panic and turn it off. But for me, I see it as a positive. So after 4 days, as I'm continually adding audiences, if you look, I've now spent $639, but my cost per acquisition has come down to $4.80. So after my testing, I can say I've now validated, right? I know now I can make money. However, if you're still not making money at this point, as long as you're not bleeding cash, the great thing is you don't lose hope, because there's ways now to scale and continue to start making money. So essentially what we're looking for after 3 to 4 days, we want to know, have we spent enough money, okay? So I have certain kind of rules or methodology that I follow to be able to scale. So usually after 3 to 4 days, campaign 1 and campaign 2 have spent enough money, okay? And by that, I usually want them to spend at a minimum of, again, about, 30 times what my target CPA is, because then I know I've got enough data to be able to scale it. And then when I scale, it's not as risky versus just scaling right away. So this is really, really important. And this is a big mistake that a lot of people make when they scale, is they forget the basics. So they forget the first part of this presentation, where what will happen is you start testing, you find audiences that make you money, you start scaling them. But over time, these audiences or these ad sets or these new campaigns will start to decay, because your audience is only so big. So after a while, once you start hitting your audience over and over again, you're going to be making less money, and then after a while, you lose money. That's when decay sets in. So for us, the thing that we do is we are constantly testing new audiences. Every day, we're following that methodology of testing new audiences. That's how we can get to the levels of hitting high seven figures a month of revenue, because we're always testing new audiences and constantly hitting new audiences and new pockets of those audiences. So that way we don't get the decay. So once an audience dies, it's then replaced with a new one, and we can keep scaling. So essentially, if you look here, right, this is a really good example of a campaign that we had set up that actually, as a whole, is losing us money. So what I want to start to do now is teach you how we pick the audiences in our campaigns that are making us money that we can start to scale. So most people would write this off, because if you look at it as a whole at the campaign, at the bottom here, we're losing money. However, if you actually look at it, if you start to break it down, you can see that there's 2 audiences here that are making us pretty good money. So this one here, our cost per purchase is $4.18. And the other green one is $1, right? We're getting purchases for $1, which is nothing. So I know if they've hit my scale criteria, which I know I'm not showing you the amount spent because we didn't actually spend enough, but I just wanted a good example to show you. So for us, at an ad set level, if the ad set has spent at least 3x our target CPA, which it should have because we put in the minimum spend at the start, and also my cost per acquisition is I'm making at least 20% on my target cost per acquisition, then I know I can scale it. So in this case, I've got 2 ad sets that I can scale. Next, we're going to start analyzing our creative. So in the last kind of 12 months, we've started looking at our creative in a little bit of a different way. So for those, most people don't ever use this tab over here called the account overview tab. It's the most underrated place in Facebook. And to be honest, it's really Pandora's box, because you can get so many amazing insights at more of a macro level as to how your creative is performing. Okay, so once you go in there, what you can do is you can choose your creative reporting. So what that means is it amalgamates all your ads and puts them into just one kind of macro view. So if you look in red here, it shows you how many ads that creative has been used in. So again, we launched here, I believe it was with 6 ads, right? So that's used in 12 ads, 11, 18, 12, 11, and 11. So what I can look at is, when I'm starting to scale, I want things that work on a macro level. I want it to be broad, and I want it to work for mass audiences. So if you look here, this certain creative has spent $500. This one spent $745. So what I can start to do is I can get a better understanding of my ads and then apply my scale criteria to it. So here, I want to make sure that I've spent 5 times my target CPA minimum on my spend here. So anything in green on the left-hand side confirms that I've spent more than, so in this case, it would be $50. And then on the right-hand side, again, I want my CPA to be 20% or more. The reason why I keep talking about 20% is as you start to scale, or when you scale your ads, your revenues and your margins get finer. So that way I know if they're already making me good money in my testing phase, there's room in my margins, I have some wiggle room in my margins for when I scale. So in this case, what we generally do is I will take the top 3 or 4 creative, okay, and scale those. The others that performed well and made me money, what I generally do is I put them on pause, but I will use them for later. And the reason being is we get something called creative decay. So over time, your creative dies and you'll need new creative to come in and replace them. So now that we have profitable profitable audiences or interests or lookalikes, and we have great creative, what we can now do is start to look at scaling. So essentially, what I want to do is bring back one of the first slides, and now the separate business managers and the different ad accounts that we have start to come into play, okay? So this is where we start to spread our risk, is when we start to scale. Because, again, if you're spending $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a day, if you're just doing it in one ad account or a few ad accounts in one business manager, and that goes down, that's all of your income gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you back to the creative overview, and what I do is I split my creative into different ad accounts. So each ad account has one dedicated creative, okay? So in this case, I've taken the top 4, and this one will go into ad account 2, this one ad account 3, this one ad account 4, and this one ad account 5. Ad account 1 will only be used to keep testing my audiences and keep testing my creative. So we keep that constant feeding of new audiences going. So what we're then going to do is we're going to run it, again, exactly the same way. We're going to create our CBOs. We're going to do them for Instagram. We're going to do them for Facebook. We're going to, okay? And then we're going to take our audiences, so our winning audiences, and do the exact same thing. So remember, the winning audiences are things that meet our scale criteria. Have they spent X amount of money, and are they making us a certain kind of percentage of profit? So in this case, we're going to bring them across, and what we do is we make more CBOs, and then from there, we add 2 to 6 of our winning audiences, okay? And that's really important. And then what we do is each day, we just take the winning audiences that meet our scale criteria and just keep adding them, and we run our kind of phase 1 at $250, okay? So what we're actually doing now is we're running a test, and we call this a scale test. So certain creative and certain audiences will only work at small budgets. When we start to scale them up, even though they're making us good money at small budgets, they'll lose us money, right? There's no real reason why, but it's just kind of the roll of the dice with Facebook. But what we're doing is we're running the same thing for a minimum of 3 days. So instead of each campaign spending a minimum of $60 a day, we're kind of upping the budgets, and we're upping the ante to $250. And what we're going to do is in each of these ad sets, we're going to dupe this creative. So we've got one creative, but we're going to duplicate it 3 to 4 times in each ad set. And the reason why we do that, I know it sounds stupid because it's the exact same creative and you think they would perform exactly the same, but they don't. They perform wildly different. And I'm not going to go into the kind of finities as to why, but that's down to the way Facebook's algorithm works. But what we're doing is by having 3 to 4 variations is we're going to give it the best possible chance of being successful over our 3-day scale test. And so again, what that looks like at day 1, day 2, so we're just adding more CBOs and we're letting them run. So with each CBO that we've then let run for a minimum of 3 days, we're going to have a criteria. So if the ad set is not profitable, we turn it off, right? We stop it running because it's probably spent a good amount of money. However, if that ad set is profitable, we keep it on. And if it's made us over 20% net profit, we then do something called Blitz scaling. So all we're then doing is taking that single interest or that single lookalike ad set, and we're duplicating that into its own CBO, and then giving that a $250 to $1,000 a day budget. We used to go higher, so we used to be running $10,000, $20,000 budgets a day, but it just doesn't work with Facebook anymore. So you're better off keeping your spend at campaign level at $1,000 or below. And again, we're taking that single creative, but this time we're duplicating it 6 to 12 times. So we're having even more creative in there. And again, the budgets are higher. I want to give this ad set or this kind of scaled CBO the best opportunity to win. And with those CBOs, same rule applies. Run them for 3 days. You'll notice day 1 will be terrible. Day 2 generally is going to improve. Then day 3, day 4 is where you should start making money. What you have to remember is you're working with an algorithm. You've got to train the algorithm to make money in the way that you want. If you turn things off too quickly, right, you're never giving Facebook enough time to understand how to make things work. So the only way that you can do that is to kind of spend through the barrier. For us, as a rule of thumb, if we're losing more than 20% in any given day, then we'll start to turn things off, okay? But apart from that, we'll have days where we lose $5, $10, $20,000, but most days we're making good money, okay? So you've got to ride the roller coaster, and you kind of got to ride it out. So kind of just to reflect, the reason why we're testing is because we're looking for validity in our creative and in our interest. It means we have a better chance of success when we scale, and it's also way less risky when we decide to scale. And then the reason why we blitz scale and keep testing the audiences at the same time is because it provides us rapid, sustainable growth. So this is how it looks kind of in reality. So this is a store that we started actually in July. So it did 226,000 in July. August, it did just over 500,000. And then technically now last month, I took this on the morning of the 30th September, did just over 1 million, okay? So that's what you can do, and honestly, like, it really isn't that difficult. I know this sounded like a lot of information and quite technical, but as you become kind of pretty, even just mediocre at media buying, this is really simple. It just comes down to, like, having a big pair of bollocks that means you can spend as much money as you can each day. And just remember, like, you're fighting against the algorithm. So the more you spend, the more data you get, and the better your results tend to be. Thank you. Has anyone got any questions?
Hey there, how's it going? Question on how you iterate on your audience. So for example, I'm targeting the Christian niche. So for example, I found that Christians in Utah are more likely to buy something I'm selling, right? Where do you go after this? That's what kind of confuses me.
So that's a really good question. And don't feel like you're going to be kind of niched out of what you're doing, because I don't know the exact figure, but I know in America people are pretty damn religious. So there's more people than that are just in Utah. Yeah, you'll have certain audiences that make you a lot of money, but you'll burn through them very quickly. So we used to run stores and we used to only run interest. So for example, I do a lot of makeup, sell lots and lots of makeup, right? So I would only do things like Sephora and really, really dial in. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll do people that like Mac, right? So I would find direct interests that correlate, then go indirect. And then if you have something that scales, that's really dialed in, just do anything. Camping, Shopify, shoes, right? Because you're so dialed in, Facebook's algorithm will be working so well for you. It's just gonna pick relevant people in the pockets of those audiences and find the people that work, right? It knows what works when you start spending big money. So to be completely honest, you'll run out of relevant interest very quickly, and so just go, irrelevant after that, and just let Facebook do the work.
Hey, thank you so much. I have a question if you've ever had any experience doing painted door testing, essentially creating a fake brand as a way to kind of test pricing and promotion.
Yep.
And what is some of the lessons that you learned from that? And do you ever experience any sort of, Facebook is now cracking down on a lot of with accounts. So I'm just curious as to your lessons learned and your experience doing that on Facebook.
So that's actually how we test everything.
Yeah.
So we'll never have a product. We'll test it. And we'll just run spend to it. We'll usually run $3,000 to $4,000 a spend and see if we can validate the idea. If it works, we turn it off. We refund absolutely everyone, okay? And then, source the product and then go from there, right? We've had it in the past where we spin up these stores and the offer's so good where you're tempted to get greedy and keep it running and then try and like panic source the product and then the product is shit, right? Get it right the first time. The reason why Facebook cracking down is because the quality of the product is terrible and the consumer experience is terrible, right? It's not always the case, but it is happening. And then your next one was, how do you deal with accounts going down? Yeah, we lose a lot of accounts all the time. And we've developed something around it. If you have a problem, if anyone has a problem with it, speak to me after. I don't really want to say it on camera, what we do, but I can help you out.
Hey, yeah, really helpful talk, Sam. So curious about, for a subscription-based company that has a higher CPA, let's say you're looking like at the $50, $60 range, how does that impact some of these numbers? Are you still looking at the same like 5 to 10x? I mean, like there's a lot of different multiples you had in the different slides, so I was trying to keep up with that. But how does the price elasticity sort of affect some of those multiples?
So we run a teeth whitening subscription brand, and the great thing about subscriptions is you have lifetime value. So I know my lifetime value, and I know what I can afford to pay for a customer. So in our case, dude, I can afford to pay up to like $150 before I lose money, right? So I know in the market, if I want to pay up to my lifetime value, I'll lose a shitload of money up front. I won't be net positive for say like 3 or 4 months, but then in month 4, once I hit that lifetime value, I then start making money. So the real thing is like, whoever can afford to pay the most for a customer generally tends to win. And that's why it's really important, like Roman said, source a really good supplier because they will cut your costs massively. Sorry, I know I've gone on a little bit of tangent. But they'll cut your costs massively, which means you can afford to pay more for a customer, which means you can scale more and you can make more money. Did I answer your question?
I mean, like, yeah, somewhat. Because, I mean, initially you're making hypotheses about LTV, right? Because you don't know how long they're going to...
So what we'll do with a subscription in that case is we'll run a test, right? So I'll aim to get 100 people. Obviously, you may aim to try to get them for $50, $60. Really, you should be able to acquire most customers as long as your subscription isn't, mad, like stupidly expensive. If it's in the $50 to $60 range, you should be able to acquire people for $60. So then I know I want to try and get, say, 50 to 100 people, and then I'm just going to test. I'm just going to see how it goes, right? I'll get it. I'll then turn it off, and I'll let it run for a few months. But if you're running, say, $50, $60, your first month, you're going to lose money, but I'm sure as shit that your gross margins are going to be really good on that second, or your net margins are going to be really good on that second month. So chances are you may actually be net positive month 2. So then all you're going to do is look at your churn rate between month 1, which is usually the highest, and month 2, and then you can actually sit and just calculate your numbers to be like, okay, I know now my churn rate is below, say, 20%, and if it's below 20%, I know I'm net positive. So then what I can do is start running my ads again, and then, especially if you're running like a subscription offer, you're just trying to dial in your front end and make sure your CPA is as low as possible. All I would say is, though, don't aim to go too low because you'll get really crappy customers, and then you'll get disputes, chargebacks, refunds, BBB. Like I've been there, like we've had it, right, where we got CPA like below $1 for a subscription product, but we had like the worst people in the world as customers. So yeah, it's a real balancing act.
Yep. Now I'd be curious, Roman, like your take on it, because it felt like you were sort of really like super scrappy, lower experimental spend, like 10, 20, $30 a day type of thing. I'd almost be curious, like, which seemed like a contrarian view to what Sam is saying, or maybe I'm...
So with that, the great thing is there's no right or wrong way to do it. This is just how I do it, but I have really close friends that do things completely differently, right? So it just works differently for different people. You've just got to find the thing that works for you. But the main thing is you just got to be courageous and you just got to go for it, right? You just got to run these tests. You got to be willing to lose money, or in our case, like we just think about it as investing money, because every dollar I spend, I know I'm a step closer to kind of cracking the funnel and making it work for me.
I'm speechless right now. I'm blown away because I thought that Facebook ads weren't working anymore. And I know I rarely click on an ad, so I'm just blown away at how successful you've been with the ads. So 2 questions. Are your ads sometimes like an offer or a discount or sort of coupon? And have you ever thought about teaching a class?
I've been asked a lot. I actually do quite a lot of these speaking events. I just do it because...
Something more detailed, though.
No, I haven't. because it just takes so much time. And most of the guys that are running info, like teaching shit, are not making money on e-com. They'll post screenshots, but then because you don't have the time, you physically don't have the time. So be really careful. Honestly, like if anyone's thinking about buying a course, come to me first and I'll tell you whether to buy it, okay? Because I know pretty much all the guys in the space. If anyone is looking to get sorted, a really, really good teacher, check him out on YouTube, is a really good friend of mine. He's called Jordan Welch, W-E-L-C-H. He's fantastic. And I know he's taken a lot of people who've made no money or lost quite a bit of money, and now they're starting to make decent money. And he's got all free videos. So before you pay a penny for someone to teach you, for example, right, my time for most of you guys would be fucking worthless because I'm going to teach you things that are too high level that you're not going to pull anything out of. Whereas my time is better spent with someone who's, say, making, $10,000, $20,000 a day, who's looking to make $50K a day, right? Because I'm closer to them in the ladder. Whereas all the information you guys need to get started is free online on YouTube. Everything is free. Some of it is a little bit dated. Some things will change. They may not tell you to run CBOs, but in all honesty, you just need to get out there, get started, and learn, make mistakes like any business. And then very quickly, you'll become pretty decent. And like with Roman's zones, you'll realize that you're starting to level up in your zones as well. Do I do what? Yeah, we run Pinterest. In beauty, it's really good and it's cheap. Like Facebook's quite expensive now. Pinterest is really cheap, but the audience isn't as good because the algorithm isn't as good, so they don't convert as much. So in terms of it's cheaper to show ads, but the number of people that convert from the ads is a lot lower. But for us, I can afford to pay for them, so I do it. And again, it's just one of those things. I would focus on Facebook first. It's the easiest platform to understand, and it's the easiest platform to get results with.
Do you use any elaborate funnels, or do you go directly from ads to a product sell page, or do you use landing pages, or do you collect emails through the process?
So I'm really lazy. Honestly, we just run everything straight sale to the product page. To the point, like, we've not even really done pre-landers. We've done some fun things, like we've sent people to like a page where they spin a wheel and everything, which is kind of fun. But honestly, it just takes so much time. All I want to do, I just want to see what works, and I want to bring as much value to the customer as possible. And so, I just don't want to be slowed down. I want to move really quick. Whereas, you could check, for example, you could look up the things I'm doing, see where I'm falling short, and go, okay, I think I can try and run exactly what he's doing, right? I'm going to copy what Sam's doing, right, but I'm going to try running a pre-lander. And just see, can you deliver more value, more information to get someone to convert? So for me, I'm dyslexic as hell. And so writing is a pain in the ass. I can't write, I can't read. So it's hard work for me. Whereas, I can whip up product pages, I can run ads easy in my sleep. Whereas that's not my specialty. Whereas if you're a good copywriter, hell yeah, write pre-landers, because you'll get people to convert.
How expensive are your products?
Pardon?
How expensive your products are?
Changed everything from free. So we do some offers where it's free, where you just pay for shipping.
Okay.
And then we do everything up to like $85.
Got it.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I have a question about when you're scaling, at what point, if ever, do you test no targeting? Just let the pixel run in a country or
all the time.
Several countries, or what point do you do that?
Honestly, straight away, like we'll run audience tests, because what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to validate, is my offer really working, right? Will it make money? So if I'm close to break even, I know I have audiences and then I can scale up and start to make money. So what I'll do is, if it's making really, really good money, if it's crushing in the testing phase, I'll just go straight out and I'll do $1,000 no interest targeting. And by that, for the guys that don't know, it's basically targeting the whole of the United States, right? If you're doing the US, absolutely everybody. But what we've got to remember is you're letting the algorithm do all the heavy lifting. You're literally letting Facebook do all the work for you. So it's a very simple way, but it's a really good way to get results once your kind of ad account and your ads are dialed in, because you know that Facebook is going to do that heavy lifting for you and do the work. But you have to generally try doing it at higher budgets, because the audience size is so big, it can generally take quite a bit of money to get it optimized, to start getting it to make money. But honestly, very quickly we do it, yeah.
And also another question, when you're scaling internationally, multiple countries, multiple languages, how do you go about that on your campaign structure? you do one campaign per country, per language? How do you go about that?
So when we're scaling internationally, initially we'll always start in the US. That's the country usually with the biggest buying power, okay? And then once we've kind of got the US working and it starts making us money, we'll then go to what we call the big five, or technically the big four, which is Canada, Australia, UK, New Zealand. So, primarily English-speaking countries, again, with big buying power. And then what we'll then do from there is we will run each country will have an ad account in its time zone, okay? That's very important because once the ad account has gone midnight, it's gonna reset, okay? And you don't wanna run it in, say, PST, because it's gonna reset in the middle of their day and could mess up all the optimization that it's had, okay? So you're gonna create new ad accounts, and then you're gonna set them in the time zones. And then in terms of kind of optimizing for like language specific, it just depends how deep you want to go, right? I know Roman, like he's had a lot of success just taking products that work and are saturated in America and just applying them to the French market. So it's a huge advantage. If you can speak more than one language, I would stay away from America and I would just start doing like a country that you can speak that language, because the ads will be really cheap and you'll get people's attention. But in terms of us starting to do it, we do it a lot later down the road when the campaigns start to become less profitable. We have little things that we do, and that's being one of them. The other thing that we do as well is we actually change up the race of the people in our ads, and we target people specifically by their race, and that works really, really well. So give you an example, we were selling hair extensions, and we'd have pictures of, beautiful white women in hair extensions, and it would crush. And then as it started to die, we then started using African-American ladies. And then it just took the campaign into life and just absolutely killed it. You have to get your targeting refined, but that's another way that you can take old campaigns that are dying and bring them back to life, even if it's not a beauty product. It's because a lot of these minorities don't always see ads with people that are like them in them. So if you start creating ads with people like them in them, that's something that stands out in their newsfeed. It's a thumb stopper. It gets them to engage. And a lot of the time, it just builds immediate trust if they see that they're actually represented with the brand.
Yeah, I'm sure you get this question a lot, but how do you think about Amazon in all this? So, like, for example, you saw this teeth whitener thing. How do you sort of make the person not open a new tab, go to Amazon.com, type in teeth whitener, and just buy it from there? Like, what's your logic there?
I just make really, really good ads, right? And I try to make an ad that builds a connection with the brand, or I just make my offer way better. Right? There's certain ways that you can do something. You can have like a brand-oriented approach, like Apple. They can put anything out and people will buy it because people are so deeply connected to their brand on an emotional level. Or you can have an offer, which we do a lot of as well. So we run really good offers that you can't get as cheap on Amazon, because I know I can source the product just as cheap as anyone on Amazon, but I don't get stung with the hideous fees that Amazon gives people. And then the other thing is my creative, right? I make really good eye-catching creative. And so, most time people are going to go through, they're going to be engaged with what I'm doing. And, honestly, if someone stops and then goes to Amazon and prefers to buy on Amazon, cool, I don't want you as a customer anyway, right? I don't see Amazon as competition. To be honest, I don't really see anyone as competition with media buying. The reason being, as soon as I've won the auction and I'm on the newsfeed, that's my spot. Right? I'm not competing with anyone really at that point, because Facebook, if I'm running teeth whitening, is never going to run 2 teeth whitening ads in a row. Right? That's just generally not going to happen. So, I've got my spot, and if I don't get someone to take action at that point, yeah, I can go back and I can hit them again. But most of the time, especially if you're doing offer-based marketing, it's going to be the first time you hit them. And you've got to remember, humans act on impulses, right? You see something and you want it right away. Most people don't have the rational logic to stop, go to Amazon, do their product research. And also, most people, if you've ever clicked on many ads on Facebook, that tends to disappear pretty quickly. So once you go back into the newsfeed, that's gone, and you're going to lose the offer. They do that deliberately. So in all honesty, I don't really care about Amazon. It doesn't bother me. I'd like to know how to sell on it because I want to make more money, but, there you go.
Do you see any difference between conversion rates on mobile versus on cell phones from and desktop, and does it matter really from your ad design perspective?
So that's actually a very, very good question. Yeah, you do. You will see a higher conversion rate on desktop, but 90% of your traffic will always be mobile, right? People from Instagram and Facebook generally only use their phones. Not many people use their computers to browse, okay? So yeah, you do see a better conversion rate, but you can't spend as much money. So we're pushing to spend as much money on mobile as possible. And what was the rest of your question? I apologize.
You kind of optimize for which medium.
Got it. So we will, for example, on desktop, you can have slightly longer copy, right? On mobile, it's not as long. I don't generally like to have my copy cut off. I like to keep my copy short and sweet and let my ad and my headline do the talking. But the real optimization actually comes on the landing page, okay? You should not be using responsive design because it's fucking terrible, okay? You should be building custom landers for mobile, and you should be building custom landers for desktop. They should be completely different experiences. So you should go and look. There are some sites, I can't think off the top of my head, that have fantastic mobile experiences. And you should know yourself, just going on them and think, wow, it's useful and it's easy to buy. All you're ever trying to do is add value to the consumer and make the buying experience as seamless and as easy as possible. For example, most people in a lot of stores have their add to cart button halfway down the fucking page, right? So that's another thing. Like if you see a company that spends a lot of money on ads and you can see it easily, you can just Google how to find people's Facebook ads, right? You can go onto the page and find anyone's ads. Go in there, have a look, and if you see that the landing page sucks, just make a better landing page, source the product, and run it. You'll probably beat them because it's harder to buy, and it causes friction or it causes cognitive dissonance.